There is a power most people overlook because it is neither loud nor flamboyant. It is silent. Please think back to a moment when you were in a conversation. You kept talking, explaining more and more, only to feel control slipping away. Meanwhile, the person across from you said nothing, held your gaze. Your heartbeat quickened, heat rose in your neck, and your hands moved without command. And it was that silence that unsettled you, making you speak even more, revealing things you never intended to. In that moment you realized, it is not the one who speaks the most who holds power, but the one strong enough to remain still. Nietzsche warned, in the game of power, noise is often the mark of weakness. The truly strong do not need to prove themselves with words. They let the void do the work. And that void is like a dark corner in a room. The darker it is, the more every eye is drawn toward it. Silence does not erase you. It makes your presence unavoidable. Yet most of us fear silence. We fear being judged, overlooked, swallowed by emptiness. So we rush to fill it with unnecessary words. And in that rush, we hand away all power. If you've ever left a conversation with the thought, "I said too much," you already know the balance of power had shifted. This video will show you what Nietzsche called it, a subtle maneuver, seemingly harmless, yet capable of turning an entire atmosphere upside down. And if you stay until the end, you will understand why most people never dare to use it, because it forces them to confront their deepest weakness. The moment you can hold silence is the moment the balance of power bends toward you. Do you notice how much you fear the quiet? In a conversation, a few seconds of silence appear, and you rush to fill them with a throwaway sentence. When someone doesn't reply to your message, you add another line, an extra emoji, anything to cover the unease in your chest. The truth is, you can't stand the space, and that inability is your greatest weakness. When you fear silence, you're easy to steer. All the other person has to do is stay still, and you'll start talking more, justifying more, revealing far beyond what's necessary. Think back to the last argument you had. They went quiet, and you grew urgent, words spilling faster until you said things you wished you hadn't. While you were busy proving a point, the power slipped away. Nietzsche would call this proof of a bitter truth. Most people don't have the strength to stand still. We're obsessed with noise, with words, with the constant need to assert. And because of that, we become easy prey for those who can hold their silence. Their quiet makes us expose ourselves completely. The most dangerous mistake is confusing silence with invisibility. You believe that if you don't speak, if you don't jump in, you'll be forgotten. But the truth is the opposite. Silence, held consciously, is the most forceful presence there is. It turns heads toward you, stirs questions, invites speculation, even concern. While you're frightened by the gap, they are swallowed by it. You can feel your own strength drain every time it happens. After a meeting, you leave with the sense that you overshared and over-explained. After a debate, you realize you lost your composure, while the other person simply sat in the quiet and let you tire yourself out. These moments aren't harmless. They are signs that you've never learned to master the pause. Here is the problem to name clearly. You don't grow weak because you lack arguments. You grow weak because you hand your power away, simply because you can't endure silence. Nietzsche warned, "The one who cannot face the void within will always be controlled by others." Let this moment be lit up. If you don't face the fact that silence is the test of strength, you will keep forfeiting power in the most ordinary situations, and you will never understand why you end up on the back foot, even when every word you said was right. Nietzsche once wrote, "The strongest person is the one who can stand alone in silence." For him, power is not measured by the volume of words. but by the ability to endure the emptiness others cannot bear. This is the will to power in its hidden form. No need to pound the table, no need to shout, only the ability to remain still. And within that stillness, others reveal their deepest insecurities. Think about the ordinary situations you've lived through. When someone falls silent in conversation, you feel the urge to speak more. The pause makes you uneasy, so you rush to fill it with words, unwittingly exposing your true thoughts, your emotions, even your weaknesses. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is the unfamiliarity with silence. Nietzsche would say, in that moment, your will to power dissolves while the other person quietly takes control. In Nietzsche's view, silence is not retreat. It is a form of indirect attack. Silence is like a mirror. You add nothing, you only reflect. And in that reflection, the other is forced to see their own truth. You don't have to expose them. They expose themselves. That is the pinnacle of strength. This runs against the habits of the majority. People seek validation through words, through arguments, through constant demonstration. They believe that the more they speak, the stronger they appear. But Nietzsche points out, the more words, the more openings for weakness. Meanwhile, the one who masters silence needs only a glance, a pause, a nod, and the room is unsettled. That is why Nietzsche regarded silence as a kind of hidden weapon. It doesn't display itself like swords or spears, but it is more dangerous precisely because it is harder to detect. Like a dagger wrapped in cloth. No one notices it until it is drawn. Those who master silence do not need threats. Their quiet presence alone is enough to shift the atmosphere. Perhaps you've met someone like this. In a group, they don't speak much, but every word they utter carries weight. They don't interrupt, yet their silence makes everyone wait. This is not an accident. It is the product of inner strength, what Nietzsche called the will to power, the mastery of oneself before the mastery of others. And here is the inversion you must grasp. You are not weakened by silence. You are weakened when fear controls you. Silence, when chosen consciously, does not erase you. It makes you mysterious, unpredictable. And in a noisy world, unpredictability always means power. The moment you dare to hold still, while everyone else scrambles to fill the void, is the moment you step into the kind of power Nietzsche believed only a rare few dare to wield. If you want to understand why silence makes so many people tremble, you have to look into the unconscious mechanism that began long ago. From childhood, we were taught that silence often signals danger. When a parent fell silent after your mistake, the fear cut deeper than when they shouted. When a teacher stopped speaking and fixed their gaze on you, the stillness turned into panic. The unconscious remembered, silence is unsafe. Silence means abandonment, judgment, exposure. So as adults, we fill the gap because we cannot bear the echo of it inside our bodies. Jung called this unresolved emotional memory, the shadow you carry. You don't respond to silence with reason, but with old wounds. The unconscious whispers, if you stay silent, you'll disappear. And you believe it. So you speak more, justify, interrupt, only to prove you still exist. But in truth, the noise erases you. Nietzsche viewed this differently. He believed fear of silence reveals a soul too weak to face itself. In silence, all outside noise fades, and only the inner voice remains. If you cannot stand still with yourself, if you cannot endure the quiet, then you are running from your own depths. And one who flees from himself, how can he ever hold power over others? Think back to a meeting, a conversation. When silence fell, your heart raced, your mind scrambled for words. That is no random instinct. It is an unconscious reflex, like a rope snapping you back, forcing you to prove yourself at once. But in that hurried moment you open your mouth, the power slips away. This is the dangerous loop. The more you fear silence, the more you speak. The more you speak, the more you reveal. The more you reveal, the easier you are controlled. And you leave the room wondering why you always feel diminished, why something essential slipped away. Nietzsche would whisper, "It was never taken." You handed it over. The turning point comes when you reverse the reflex, when you see silence not as emptiness but as space for others to expose themselves. When you dare to hold still, you transform the old mechanism into a weapon. You stop being the prey, afraid of abandonment, and become the one who makes others lay themselves bare. But here is the warning. If you never break this unconscious cycle, you will keep losing power, not in grand battles, but in countless small moments, repeated until being overpowered feels normal. And by then, you won't even notice that silence has become your chain. And if you stay until the end, you'll understand why Nietzsche believed most people never dare to use silence. Because when you hold it, you don't just control others. You force yourself to face your deepest essence. And for the majority, it is easier to surrender power than to look directly into that abyss. Imagine carrying a dagger, not flashing it in the open, but wrapped in an old piece of cloth. From the outside, it looks ordinary, harmless. People pass by without a second thought. But you know, at the right moment, if you draw it, the blade is sharp enough to change everything. That is the essence of silence. It does not boast, it does not glitter. Yet its danger lies in the fact that no one sees its hidden edge until it's too late. Silence is the dagger wrapped in cloth for 3 reasons. First, it makes no noise, so others lower their guard. They think you are passive, that you've stepped back, and in their false confidence, they reveal too much. Second, silence creates mystery. When the blade is hidden, all they can do is speculate, and speculation itself breeds unease. Third, silence gives you the power of timing. Once everyone has already exposed themselves, a single sentence, like a dagger drawn in one clean motion, can cut through and shift the entire balance. You've seen this play out. In a heated debate, voices clash, arguments overlap, and everyone fights to be heard. And then there is one person who waits. They do not scramble to interrupt. They simply listen. And when they finally speak, the room falls silent, because that one line pierces the weak spot no one else dared touch. Power does not belong to the one who shouts the most. It belongs to the one who knows when to speak. The blade needs only to be unsheathed once, and everyone remembers. Nietzsche would say, most people never have the patience to keep the cloth on. They want to flaunt the blade, to prove they are armed. But a blade on display grows dull, for what is obvious cannot wound in surprise. Silence keeps your edge sharp, and when you wield it, you don't just defend yourself. You let others cut themselves open on the emptiness they cannot bear. Have you ever felt it? In a group you say nothing, and suddenly others start filling the space, confessing things they never intended, just to drown the quiet. In that moment, you did nothing, yet power tilted toward you. The dagger remained sheathed, but its weight bent the atmosphere around you. The key is this: you must learn to hold it. If you fear silence, others will seize the weapon from your hand. If you draw too soon, it loses force. But if you wait, if you endure the itch to interrupt, the anxiety of being overlooked, your silence becomes the cut no one can block. And here lies the truth most people refuse to hear. Silence is training. It demands you sit with restlessness, resist the urge to prove, and confront the terror of being forgotten. But once mastered, silence stops being a burden. It becomes your weapon. A weapon no one suspects until it is already too late. The moment you hold the cloth longer than anyone else can endure, that is the moment you win. Look straight at yourself. How many times in your life has silence made you tremble? In an interview, you couldn't bear the pause after a question, so you rushed your answer, piling on details that weren't needed. In an argument, afraid of seeming weak, you raised your voice, spoke more, tried to dominate, only to expose the insecurity you were trying to hide. You thought you were in control, but in truth, you were only proving that you couldn't endure stillness. If you're honest, you'll remember the feeling. The moment you walked away, a whisper echoed in your head. I talk too much. That was not a fleeting embarrassment. It was proof that you handed away your power right in front of the other person. No one forced you to reveal yourself. You volunteered it because you feared the space. Nietzsche would call this a form of self-betrayal, not the kind built on lies, but the kind born of your refusal to hold your silence. And the consequence? People begin to see you as an open book, easy to read, easy to predict. And once you are predictable, you lose the most precious asset in power: mystery. Without mystery, you no longer hold a position. Notice how your body reacts. Your heart races the moment a conversation halts. Your hands fidget. Your eyes dart, searching for an anchor. These are not just physical tics. They are signals of an inner self that has never been trained to stand firm in silence. You try to escape the discomfort by speaking, but the more you speak, the smaller you feel. The most dangerous moment comes when you start to normalize this weakness. You call it personality. You tell yourself you're just not the quiet type, that you need words to exist. But that is nothing more than a pretty excuse for a brutal truth. You have never disciplined yourself to turn silence into strength. Until you do, you will keep being manipulated. You will keep walking out of rooms with that hollow ache, the sense that you've given something away that you can't reclaim. This is the mirror, not to shame you, but to make you see. Every time you fear silence, you're teaching others how to control you. And if you do not change, you will spend your whole life in the role of the one who is led. Nietzsche once said, "When a man cannot endure the silence of his own being, he fills it with illusions." His warning cuts through the lie you've carried. Your fear of silence is not a fact. It is only a thin veil masking your insecurity. To break the loop, you must give silence a new name. Stop calling it absence. Call it presence. Stop treating it as a void to fill. See it as a space where power speaks without words. Reframe what you've believed. You thought, if I stay silent, they will dismiss me. The truth is the opposite. When you fall silent, they begin to wonder, and wonder is power. You once believed, I must speak to prove myself. But true strength is to prove nothing, yet watch others adjust themselves around you. The moment you redefine, you step into a higher order of presence. This begins with new inner declarations. Instead of whispering, I am weak when I don't speak, say, I am letting them reveal themselves. Instead of, silence makes me small, say, silence makes me unreadable. The words you use become the filter through which you experience reality. And if you don't change the language, you will remain trapped in the old frame, where silence equals disappearance. Look around a crowded room. The loudest voice is the first to fade. The one who speaks rarely but chooses the moment, the one who forces the room to wait. That is the person remembered. Not because their logic is flawless, but because they turned silence into the canvas. Each word lands heavier, like a hammer. Once you reframe, you see it. Silence does not erase you. It amplifies you. But a warning must be spoken clearly. If you cling to the old language, you will live in fear. You will keep stuffing the gaps with filler, and each word will strip you thinner. Never mistake noise for strength. Most noise is insecurity in disguise. And when you join that chorus, you are nothing but one more voice in a crowd of echoes. Reframing places you outside that sea. Your silence becomes the shore. Others must turn toward you. This is what Nietzsche meant by the will to power. Not forcing others, but making them revolve around you. And the first time you taste this, you will know why most never dare. They would rather lose power than confront the restlessness inside their own chest. Say this now and mean it. I am not afraid of silence. I use silence to see who truly holds power. This statement reshapes not just your behavior, but your presence. From that moment on, silence is no longer an enemy. It becomes your most loyal ally. How do you turn silence from fear into strength? Not with grand leaps, but with small rituals, repeated until your body learns to stand inside the void. Start with the ordinary. In conversation, resist the urge to rush in. Pause. Count 3 seconds before answering. That pause is your first sharpening stroke, simple, yet razor-edged. Second, train in solitude. Give yourself 10 minutes a day with no music, no screen, no conversation. At first, restlessness will claw at you. You will reach for your phone, feel the itch to escape. But once you pass through that threshold, you'll see silence does not consume you. It opens a space where you become sovereign over yourself. Third, observe. In a group, instead of racing to speak, hold your ground in silence. Watch how others slowly turn toward you, how they reveal more when not interrupted. And when you choose to speak, let it be brief and decisive. Each word will fall heavier, sharper. Do not imagine you must transform your life overnight. Think of it as learning to hold the dagger, one day, one sharpening stroke at a time. And one day you will realize, silence no longer makes you tremble. It has become the weapon you can trust in any arena. If you continue to fear silence, the price will not just be a few failed conversations. It will corrode your identity. You will become someone predictable, easy to read, and easy to control. Every time you rush to fill the void, you are digging the grave of your own mystery, the very foundation of power. And once mystery dies, power follows. You see this clearly in arguments. The one who talks the most usually leaves drained. The one who holds their silence, speaking only a single line, is the one the entire room remembers. If you do not change, you will always belong to the first group. Exhausted, but leaving behind nothing but noise. Nietzsche would warn, the fear of silence not only strips you of influence over others, but it also estranges you from yourself. Because in silence, you can hear your inner voice. And if you never dare to listen, you will keep running from your own essence. Those who cannot endure their own quiet dissolve into the noise of the crowd. And dissolving means disappearing. But when you dare to train silence, something strange happens. You realize you no longer need to prove as much. You let others talk. Let them expose themselves. Let them reveal weakness. While you, by staying still, already command the atmosphere. This is not passivity. This is a calculated presence. And it is this presence that makes every word you choose to utter strike like a blade. The final warning must be clear. If you do not learn to stand firm in silence, you will live your life as a puppet in the hands of others. They will pull the strings with pauses, and you will dance to fill them. But once you learn to wield silence, you not only escape the game, you hold the strings. Nietzsche would call this the triumph of the will to power, when you stop being pulled by noise and instead draw others into the orbit of your quiet. This is not a tactic. It is a philosophy of life, where you need not speak much, yet still bend the world to listen. Picture yourself standing in a vast square. Around you, the crowd shouts, argues, each trying to impose their voice over the other. But you don't need to shout. You only need to remain still. And it is that stillness that begins to draw attention, that quiets the noise, that makes heads turn toward you. Not because you forced your way in, but because your silence created a space no one could avoid. In that moment, you understand. Power does not lie in the number of words spoken, but in the ability to make others stop. When you train this, silence no longer feels like the enemy. It becomes an ally, like an invisible blade you carry, unseen yet sharp enough to shift the entire atmosphere. The simple truth is, not everyone is brave enough to wield it. But if you are, you step out of the whirlpool of noise and begin to live as the one holding the strings, not the puppet. This video is only a beginning. When it ends, try one small act. The next time you feel the urge to fill the pause, resist. Let silence speak for you. And you may be surprised to see the world slow down and turn around the gravity of your quiet.